We've talked a little bit about growth management, land use, and how to manage some of that growth. We've looked at the natural resources and environment that are the base for our community. And now we've also talked about those man-made things that we put in our community, the infrastructure that supports how we live and get together. But another important part that we do on our daily basis is how do we connect? How do we move about? How do we transport ourselves around the community? So our fourth presentation is Annelle Whitt with the with the task force, another volunteer. We'll talk about mobility, connectivity, and accessibility. Annelle?
Thank you. Good evening. I am excited to talk about mobility, connectivity, and accessibility because really at the very essence of that, we're really talking about the quality of our life as it relates to our ability to move from one section of the city to another, and to do it in a way that enhances and does not inhibit the quality of our life. I use the example of when I relocated here about 10 years ago. The charge I gave to the realtor was, I want to be no more than 15 minutes away from my job to get to my kids' school and any other thing I want to do with regards to shopping. Because coming from New York to California with 2.5 commute, I just didn't want to do that anymore. And so it was very important that I was able to have different options that allowed me to do those things. So that's really what we're talking about tonight. So when we're talking about mobility, connected, and I have to tell you this, I do not have my real glasses, so so if I stumble a word, just bear with me. So really, when we're talking about mobility, connectivity, and accessibility, when we're talking about what that is mobility really is the ability and knowledge to move from one location to another by a variety of travel means, whether it's by bus, whether it's by bike, whether it's by car, whether it's by taxi. So it's our ability to move. Connectivity really is needed to provide both mobility and accessibility. This means that streets and sidewalks and trails and other public transportation facilities are linked in a way that makes sense. And then accessibility is the ability for people to get directly to the places that we really need and want to go. And it also means by which we pursue our social and economic activity and interests. So when we're talking about mobility, mobility necessitates movement, but accessibility really does not. I mean, you think about it now in our world now. People access goods and services in a variety of ways. There are some of us that go to our local stores and local shops, and then there's some of us that never go there. We get on the internet and eBay or wherever we want to do and get the things we want to get. I am firsthand knowledge because of my son. People work in a variety of ways. Some of us work in office-based places. Most of us telecommute. There are those of us who telecommute. In the company I work for, I have some of my staff that I am seeing maybe once every 5 months because they work from home. And we communicate via emails or whatever else. So when we're talking about a well-planned physical access for neighborhoods and schools, parks, shopping areas that can reduce our need to have motor vehicles. And then mobility and accessibility are currently limited by a lack of connectivity in our streets and our public transit system routes right now within Columbia. So that's an opportunity for us to enhance that. This is really what a lack of mobility, connectivity, and accessibility looks like. You can see that the sidewalk terminates at mid-block. And when you look at it, you can see if there's some of our citizens who have disabilities, that's it. If you're walking down the street, taking one of your children in they're teenagers now, but strollers. I'm past the strollers. Where do you go? And I can remember back in the day when my two sons were small, that whenever I encountered something like that, it was a real drag trying to get them through to the next side. So we want to do things in a way that makes sense and that enhances our lives and do not inhibit our lives when we're trying to get from point A to point B. So there's some key elements when you're looking at a city who really has their act together when it comes to mobility, connectivity, and accessibility. They've created in a way that makes sense and that, again, enhances and does not inhibit, is a public street system with sufficient links between local and major streets that allows convenient movement throughout the community. There are cul-de-sacs and loops and other non-connecting streets, ideally are limited in number. And then a multi-model system in which all travelers travel modes, motorized and non-motorized, are strategically accommodated in street facilities and design. And then last, alternative motorized travel options such as airports, railroads, regional national buses services exist. You know, there's a public transit system that provides access to residential areas and workplaces. This would include vehicles, transit stops, and other access points accessible to persons with disabilities. And a sidewalk system that covers major streets and other important links across the community. And our curb ramps and accessible crosswalks with features that accommodate persons with disabilities pursuant to the Americans with Disability Act standards for accessible design. So what are some of the future transit plans? There are actually plans in the works right now. The city's major roadway plan is an adopted network of major streets throughout the city. And the intention of MRP is to provide sufficient major streets connectivity for traffic throughout the entire city of Columbia. The MRP is one example of transportation plan that the city currently has in place. There are other plans, such as trails and sidewalks. And I think when you look at these three plans that we currently have, it's an illustration that Columbia really is committed to becoming a multi-model city. The City of Columbia, we talk about what's existing streets we have now. The City of Columbia currently maintains a network of about 585 linear miles of streets classified as arterial, which is about 42 miles of that, collector 86 miles, local 457 miles. The city maintains an existing network of about 25.4 miles of green belt and bicycle trails like Katy Trail and some other parks and that we currently have within the city. And in our groups, I'll tell you, if you don't know what arterial, collector, and local mean, I will tell you because I can't read my notes without my glasses. Okay, existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities. The City of Columbia currently maintains the following on-street bicycle facilities. Striped bicycle lanes is about 55 miles of that. Marked bicycle routes, sharrows, which I learned is on-street symbols, which are the symbols of right now with the bike trails that they have marked in the city. I learned that. There's about 32 miles of that. There's about 359 bicycle racks and approximately 350 miles of sidewalks and pedways. Our transit services. Columbia's transit provides local bus services and is run by the City of Columbia. The service includes about 8 fixed routes, about 17 fixed route buses, and 11 paratransit vehicles that services throughout the city. In addition, Columbia Public Schools provide service for about 140 daily buses on about 500 routes, and we service approximately 8,000 students currently. The Colt Railroad and Columbia Regional Airport, the city-owned railroad provides a connection in the north-southeast railroad line in Centralia. The line currently accommodates strictly freight services and includes about 21.3 miles of main line track. The existence of the Colt line provides a possible future opportunity for a direct passenger railroad connection. And the city runs a regional airport, which for the first time I actually took going out of town this summer on vacation, which is located about 11 miles southeast of downtown Columbia and provides passenger and freight operations. So, what do we need from you? What we really need from you is to collaborate with us. We need you to partner with us as we go along this journey and finish this story. What are the possible ways to make your neighborhood more accessible and to improve its connectivity to the rest of the community? And then what strategies should the city emphasize to best achieve improvement in this area? And then lastly, but not least, what can we do together to continue to enhance the quality of our life for all citizens in Columbia as it relates to mobility, connectivity, and accessibility. So I look forward to you coming to wherever my little section is going to be so we can talk about this in more detail.
Thank you, Annelle, and I think that she demonstrated very well that we have a lot of ways to help people move around the community, and really what we're talking about at its base is how we interact with one another, both communicate, travel, and connect with one another.